Hey everyone, I'm Kevin Keckstadt, creator of Your Success PDQ. And what I do is I help people build stronger relationships by using better communication techniques so they can more easily, more readily achieve their goals. And in this video, I'm going to address 3 areas regarding 21st century learning. One of the challenges we face in this day and age is, as educators, is how to engage the students more fully into the lesson. You know, we're living in a time now where there's such a plethora of media and technology that's coming into the classroom that at times makes it very distracting, very frustrating to get a lesson across with all the iPhones and the iPads and the Facebooking and the texting and the Twittering. There's times when it can be very overwhelming. I know as an educator, as a workshop leader, there's times when I literally want to take those iPhones and throw them out the window. There have been times when I've even asked students to remove themselves from the classroom. And I went home and I thought, well, you know, Kevin, how is this actually helping you get your lesson across if you're asking students to remove themselves from the classroom? They're certainly not getting the lesson, and if I keep asking students to remove themselves from the classroom, I mean, let's face it, they've all got their phones with them, they're all texting and looking on Facebook and tweeting. That's not going to go away. It's just going to become more and more a part of the culture that happens within the schools. So I thought, okay, well, let's go around to their side of the table and find out what it is that's interesting them. Take an authentic view on the interest of what they are watching as far as videos or the games they might be playing. And the results were almost instantaneous. As soon as I took an interest in what they were doing, they began to take an interest in what lesson it was I was there to teach. And I began to start to get an insight into how 21st century learning could better be brought about for the students. I come from a time when we passively sat in our rows and listened to a teacher drone on and on and on about a subject that at the time was obscure to us, a subject like trigonometry. And we all grumbled beneath our breath, well, you know, why are we learning this? I'm never going to use this in my life at all. It doesn't make any sense. And perhaps 10 or 15 or 20 years down the road, when we became an architect or we became a civil engineer or we became an astronomer, then we began to connect the trigonometry to our job description. However, what about the people who went into the service industry? What about the people who went into cooking? What about the people who went into retail? They still didn't understand why it was they had to learn trigonometry. Let's face it, the students in this day and age are more vocal, and they're not willing to just go along with the teaching just because it's being taught. The students nowadays want to know that the lessons are applicable. And this is basically what 21st century learning is all about. So the first thing I'm going to address is results now. Students in the 21st century want results now. And what do I mean by results now? I mean, the students are looking for teachings that can be measurable in the moment. Teachings that are applicable to what's going on in their day-to-day lives right now. And if we can't make that connection for them, it's not going to be fun. They're not going to learn it. They're going to dig in their heels, and the whole lesson plan is going to fall apart. If we use trigonometry as an example, with a game many kids are playing, and at least all kids know about it, and most of the kids are playing, is Angry Birds. And if we use the fundamentals of trigonometry and correlate it with being able to get an Angry Birds score because of knowing those fundamentals, that is something that the students can relate to. They can take that knowledge, they can go and use it right outside of the classroom door. That's just one small example. The second area I'd like to address regarding 21st century learning is communication. With all, again, we're in a very exciting time regarding communications. We literally have the communication at our fingertips, where we could get information and communicate with people around the world at our fingertips. That wasn't around 10 or 15 years ago. It certainly wasn't around when I was going to school. However, what we're finding now is students are sitting side by each on a couch and they're texting each other. And there's no one-on-one engagement, there's no interpersonal skills that go along with that, and so there is a gap there. And although it might be entertaining or fun to look at, it doesn't really pose a problem when the children are 13 or 14 years old. But 3 or 4 years down the road, when they're looking for that first part-time job, they want to spread their wings a little bit, maybe save some money to buy a car, they find themselves getting to an interview stage without having mastered those one-on-one interpersonal communication skills. So we need to look at ways at balancing the technology of the day with the one-on-one skills. And the third area regarding 21st century learning is integration. We live in a time now where we're realizing that the formal learning that goes on within the 4 walls of the school, within the 6 hours of the school day, the 45-minute classrooms, as important as they are, must be integrated with what goes on outside of the school, what goes on at with the students and their peers, the students and their family. All that stuff that goes on outside of the school plays a huge role with regards to how we get our lessons across within that formal setting. One of the biggest mistakes we can make as educators is to take on that authoritarian approach where I'm the teacher, you put your cell phones away, you listen to me, you're going to learn this lesson, you're going to take this test, and nothing that goes on outside of this classroom is as important as what goes on inside this classroom. Like I mentioned earlier on in the video, the students will just dig in their heels, they're not going to engage, they're not going to get the learning, and the whole lesson plan will fall apart. The one thing I would suggest to begin with for all educators, again, is to go around and to the other side of the table, find out what it is the students are engaged with, find out what videos they're watching, find out what games they're playing, and think of creative ways that you could integrate your lesson plan to what the students are engaged in. If there's a certain video they're enthralled with, for example, and your lesson plan is to teach Macbeth, perhaps you could merge the two by having the students break out in groups of 3 and talk about what they learned from reading Macbeth. And from that, you ask them to each develop a 3 to 4 minute video about their learning, what they learned from that script. And you'll find that they'll have to start to be creative, they'll have to collaborate with each other, and they'll put something together with that collaboration and creativity as to what Macbeth meant to them. And aside from that, they'd also watch 9 other presentations from the other groups in the classroom. You know, this would give a far greater breadth and depth to an understanding of Macbeth than any test could administer. So again, the 3 areas for 21st century learning are results now, communication, and integration. So think of ways that you can utilize these 3 areas in your own teaching practice. And in the meantime, have fun, enjoy your day, find out how you can be more creative in order to help your students become more successful.